Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Crystal Core Radio Podcast, the last live show of 2024 as we get prepared to go on the wonderful holiday breaks.
Did we get to 50 shows?
We did.
Wow.
We actually have one in the bank, and Kirk and I might actually make a recorded one that might roll up during the holiday weeks. We'll see if our schedule kind of aligns, but we crushed our goal this year.
Wow.
And yeah, so we're going to take a week off because we actually have that in the bank. So we set out to hit 50. We're at this is, I think, episode 51 for the year. So wow. we're rocking and rolling. And the Game of the Year awards has come and gone. We've gotten tons of announcements as usually expected, especially around gamers. Lots of little drama that's going around there. So we got Mugan, we got Chris, and we got myself today. We'll see if anybody else pops in for this show. Thanks everybody for who's hanging out with us live. We're kind of playing around with the time zone and when to record. But let's toss over to Chris, dude. What is your what you got going on in your wheelhouse, sir?
I am starting to try to set out what my goals are for next year, because this year I just tried to stay healthy and stay focused on kind of the new job, which is going into year 2. Got my second annual performance review, went really well. And so with that kind of under control, and then my health this year was a big focus in making running a regular thing. I think in November is my best month all year. I think I only missed 4 days, but I ran my first ultra marathon this last year. So lots of the big achievements done. So now I want to get back to kind of focusing on completing a wider selection of life. So I'm trying to decide what that looks like. I'd like to get some models painted in Warhammer. I'd like to set some MMO goals. I thought maybe I should reduce the number of games, but Path of Exile 2 is yeah, but what if you added games? What if it's really hard to be I'll play less games. And they're no, I don't think you will. I think you need to add more time sinks in your life. And then I've been looking at my data for Azeroth, because one of my favorite things to do when I'm just had a long week and I just want to relax is to go complete things in a known game. So for me, that's World of Warcraft. But for anybody out there that has a game that always just feels mindless to kind of drop into, people that replay old games or something like that, that's kind of what Data for Azeroth is for me. That's an online ranking website that scores everything that can be done in World of Warcraft. And that way, as you just complete things you've never done before, a quest you've never done, unlock a mount you never had, it will rank you worldwide. And so I'm globally ranked within the top 100,000 in a couple of categories, but I'd love to be in the top 100,000 in a few more.
Dude.
So I think in the recipe I'm 26,000.
The only follow up is, have you bought the $90 mount yet? Because
I know I'm almost out of time.
You're almost out of time.
No, I still haven't switched over our phone company. I said I would switch over our phone company, and it saves the cost of the mount in a single month. And instead I'm spending the cost of the mount every month, giving it to AT&T. And I just need to do something more financially responsible, like buy a large dinosaur. I'm losing money to not hurry up and buy. My wife's it will save us more than $90 a month. Flip it over, buy them out, and then we'll just pocket more than $90 every month from here on out. Every month that doesn't have a digital dinosaur in it will just be a massive savings. So for any of you that haven't viewed the Brutosaur as losing money versus making money, maybe you need to revisit how your math works. You're probably doing conventional school math.
This sounds like what is it, MMO math? I'm losing money if I'm not.
I'm losing money
because it costs me time. Grinding. What is this? Mugan, dude, we're wrapping up 2024. You're getting ready. You just launched your trailer for your comic book that's coming out. What do you got? What's going on in your wheelhouse, sir?
Oh man, me, as far as what I'm doing and everything, I'm trying to find time to actually game, because I haven't really gamed much at all. The only game that I really played this year was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and a bit of Stellar Blade, and I just finished Final Fantasy 16, and I still have a whole catalog of games. I bought Visions of Mana, still in the plastic. I had Yakuza, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, still in the plastic. Unicorn Overlord, still in the plastic.
That's so good. That's such a good game.
Yeah, I'm also about to buy. Was it the Neo Fantasian?
Yeah, that just came out. Came out.
I'm buying that for this holiday. I'm buying Astro Bot this holiday. I still got to buy the physical edition of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 Fighters Collection. Still got to get that. I still have a ton of games. I haven't got.
What's your favorite one that you own in plastic?
Oh yeah, I forgot about Eonian Chronicles in the plastic.
Okay.
So let me see. I would say as far as in the plastic is concerned, I think it would be Unicorn Overlord.
Okay.
That's the one I'm really anticipating to get.
That is a must-have in plastic. You heard it here first. Of games in plastic, it's very rewarding.
Yeah, and then Triangle Strategy came out for the MetaQuest 3 and everything, so I want to buy that over the holidays. So I like, oh man, like I gotta find some time to actually play because me, I have to be productive. And now since I've been doing my comic book company, which I launched my comic book company and my comic series in January 6th of 2025. So now I'm wrapping things up, especially with my father and my brother, because we're getting the merchandise and stuff ready to go along with my comics and stuff. So I'm all over the place. I'm all over the place. And then, of course, the holidays is coming. My daughter's getting on my nerves about Christmas gifts and stuff like that, too. So, yeah, man. But, yeah, that's pretty much my 2024. But I'm trying to spend the holidays playing some video games for once.
Yeah, like holiday gaming is something that I'm hoping I'm going to be able to get some time with, and I've been able to. Like, it's been fun kind of playing. I've been playing Unicorn Overlord. I've enjoyed my time with that. I've also been looking at. I've been trying to get, and I'm now in this weird impasse because you mentioned that you played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That was one of the biggest, or at least for me, one of the big announcements from last night's Game Awards that it's coming to PC on January the 23rd. And now I'm like, well, I haven't beaten it on the PlayStation, and it's hard for me to find time because the downside about my PlayStation is it's hooked up to a TV, and that TV is usually, watching Peppa Pig or something like that. Like I have to throw like elbows at a 3-year-old just in order to try to get some time with that. But I was like, oh, go ahead.
I've been watching a lot of Peppa Pig this year as I continued on my journey of learning another language, and I've heard that I should be watching Bluey.
Bluey is the best, dude.
Okay, I've heard Bluey is better. Like if I'm going to be consuming this, I've heard Bluey is a better choice.
I like the Pokio. I used to watch that with my daughter. It was Pokio. What was the other? The Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. Yeah, Peppa Pig.
I don't know how many of these come in German, but
oh, okay. Well,
so
Pokio's UK. It's from the UK. So
okay, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Real Kitty Hawk points this out. So I asked Julie. I don't know if I'm gonna get it. I'd see how good of a boy I've been, this year. But I asked Julie for a portal, PS Portal, because I was like, my PlayStation's sitting there, and I don't have all right, how can I go ahead and get access to it? But I might wait and just start over on Final Fantasy VII Remake and play it on PC, and then play Rebirth in January, which would be really exciting and fun. And I'm hoping that it comes to GeForce Now, but I think Dragon Quest 3 didn't come on GeForce Now, while we've seen 16 and several others. So I don't know if that's something that's ultimately happening. And Solemn says they do have a PS Portal. Like, it's the thing about the Portal. The one reason I have held off all this entire time is because it only connects to Sony, and I have a Logitech G Cloud, which connects to Sony and Xbox and GeForce. Like, it's like, I don't need a single use device. But then I was like, well, it is only $200. And it's like, we'll see if I end up going in that way. But back to the Bluey, like there's this great meme out there, and it's dads looking in the mirror, and it's like the dad I aspire to be. And it's Bandit from Bluey. Is like, Bandit is my spirit animal when it comes to like trying to be a dad who's like playing with the kids and, diving into their imagination and just kind of rolling with it. And then also, so absolutely great show. Another one that we discovered, Phineas and Ferb, and as well as Hamster and Gretel. Like, those are absolute fantastic shows. But like, as an adult, like, oh, the kids are watching Phineas or Hamster, let's go. Like, I'm hanging out right there.
That's what I need, because I've gotten to the point that I can do most Peppa Pig episodes with full German audio, full German subtitles, and then sometimes I'm okay without the subtitles. So I'm ready for the next level.
Nice.
I'm going abroad on at least one trip next year, and they're like, oh, if we come across somebody German, and I was like, yes, if we come across a child who's lost their raincoat, I am fully prepared. Anything more complicated, and I'm really not going to be helpful, but I'm ready for the big ones. 5-year-old runs up, wants to tell me about their raincoat, I'm on board.
That sounds good. You brought up Path of Exile too. So before we kind of go through kind of our highs and lows for the Game Awards. So it is like it is really good, native on controller, cross play, cross progression. So I haven't. I was playing it on, and I avoided Path of Exile because basically when everybody was like, "Hey Brian, you want to check out?"
I downloaded that game and never played it because it just I wasn't ready for the spreadsheets, and I'm like a spreadsheet guy.
Right.
Like I can play spreadsheets as a game. Like there's not a spreadsheet category on Twitch, and I've done spreadsheet streams.
Right.
And I couldn't bring myself to do Path of Exiles 1.
So 2, when they announced, the reason I just avoided 1 wasn't because of spreadsheets or anything like that. It was that, they like by the time it was big enough for me to be like, people were like, hey, have you played it? Oh, they just announced Path of Exile 2. And I was like, well, you know what? Like I've got enough games on my plate. I'll wait till 2. 2 comes out. Looking forward to it. Pick it up. No regrets. Was enjoying it so much on, I'm playing on Steam and it's also on GeForce. I was like, oh, cross progression. When bought the supporting pack on Xbox. So I'm all in on $60 total for both editions.
Steam database. Like
but
the number of people not watching the game on Twitch, not consuming the game themselves. The number of people watching the stats page on it on Steam broke it.
Yeah.
Like
have either of you guys followed along with the drama around the game so far?
I haven't played Path of Exile.
I didn't get on board until there was gameplay to be played. And then the concern was, hey, it doesn't seem like the loot's quite right. And then my understanding is the devs said, cool, we're going to work on the loot. And then like that's it. So in my mind, I've heard game good, game get feedback, game get better.
The drama is to be absolutely expected, especially when it comes to a game that offers challenge and difficulty with no difficulty options. And the complaints end up being is that the game is too hard. And we've seen this with Elden Ring. It is literally like
it's a dodge roll. If it's going to mean something, you have to get better at it. The idea that you've mastered something in early access is riddiculous. Get better. Or go play Diablo 4.
Chris' summary is get good scrub as he
and
or maybe it's me that's back. One of the two. Well, anyway, can you guys hear me?
Get better. Go get better. Like it has a dodge roll mechanic. If that's going to be worthwhile, then people aren't going to be good at it in early access.
Yeah, absolutely.
By its very nature, if it's going to have meaningful combat in the ways that they have said, and Diablo 4 is rolling out more content. So if you want to go play easy mode, make numbers bigger, that game already exists. So as a matter of fact, the head of Diablo was really offended and tweeted out something about like how they're Diablo-like games. But I believe the best counter on Twitter was, but Diablo 4 is not a Diablo-like game.
All right. On that note, let's go with Mugan because we saw the Game Awards last night. There was I came away feeling like I enjoyed the show, but I was struggling today when my wife was asking me about it to like truly remember like any big moment that I think that kind of like when we remember the Xbox being revealed or I honestly think Light No Fire, being revealed last year was kind of the big moment. This year they no Light No Fire. So I kind of was like, I went to bed a little bit disappointed, but it wasn't because of like any of the awards, but is there, what are your highs from last night's show?
That's a good question. No, there wasn't no big moments where I'm like, I did get hyped when I saw Onimusha.
Yeah, there's some good moments for sure.
Yeah, some good moments, but no big grand moments and stuff. But the thing that really surprised me, I walked away shocked, was because I didn't expect Astro Bot to walk away with so many awards. I knew it was going to at least get one award, and I was rooting for Astro Bot, but I was not expecting it to walk away with, especially Game of the Year. And that was like a monumental like moment for me, because to me that represents like Japanese gaming, what it used to be. Because Sony's not really a very Japanese studio anymore. Ever since they moved their studios over to California and everything like that, and it felt more Western. And Sony used to have a lot of Japanese games, and they kind of walked away from that and they started going towards more like Naughty Dog with the Uncharted and The Last of Us, and everything had more Western appeal and stuff. But Astro Bot had represented that time and moment of what Japanese gaming was. And the fact is that it won. It won like Game of the Year. That just blew my mind, because I was not expecting that. And then the fact is that all Final Fantasy VII Rebirth walked away with was just the music composing or something like that award. It didn't really get any other type of awards after all of the praise Rebirth was getting throughout the time it released. Everybody was bragging about it, saying it's game of the year and stuff like that, and it pretty much didn't really walk away with anything. But
like Rebirth won music, so it won the best music. It was up for RPG. Metaphor won RPG. I agree.
Yeah,
and okay. I got like we're all Final Fantasy fans here. The debate around Final Fantasy right now like hinges on turn-based versus action. 16 goes full action. 7 remakes him. Rebirth has got this action turn-based, which honestly I really wish 16 actually had that combat. Like love that. Yeah, I love that combat way more than I love 16, but man, I'm so glad I played it in that order so that when I stepped into remake, I'm like, oh, this is a step up as opposed to like, oh man, like they really, don't have this feature. That all being said is that you come in with Metaphor, RPG of the year, turn-based. Is there a future in which that we see another Final Fantasy turn-based game in the main series?
Yes, that's a good question. Right now, Square Enix is at a point where they really have to like reorganize and reshape or what they think Final Fantasy is, because they've been experimenting. We had Final Fantasy 15, which I didn't like, and then they came out with the remake trilogy or whatever, and they had a hybrid between the ATB and the action gameplay, which I do like that gameplay from Final Fantasy 7 remake. I think it's awesome. So when they announced Final Fantasy 16, I was hoping that they was going to just take what Final Fantasy 7 remake had done with the combat and just elaborated on it and add their own twist onto it with Final Fantasy 16. Instead, what they did was they did a character action game like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta and everything. And I'm like, why? What do you guys are doing here with this? Like, why? So it's like they have like an identity crisis. They're trying these different things to see what sticks, what works. And Final Fantasy 16 at this point, it didn't hit hard as they thought it would hit. And then once it came out on PC, it didn't bring in the numbers that it did. And I'm like, of course, if you want to wait a year later to drop it on the PC when it should have been day and date, and you should make it on a bunch of different platforms so everybody can get their hands on it. So the question is, with Final Fantasy 17, what are they going to do? What are they going to do now? Or should they go back to turn-based, or should they take what they learned from Final Fantasy VII Remake and then just make that the model combat system, but each entry they just add on to it, like how the previous Final Fantasy was. All of them were turn-based, but each Final Fantasy did something different with the turn-based or whatever, with their own twist to make it unique to that Final Fantasy. So because they dead set on wanting to make this like an action game somewhat, or a hybrid somewhat, if y'all dead set on it, then be consistent with it. Because when you ask somebody what Final Fantasy is today, everybody no one knows what it is, because it's constantly keeps switching and changing. So if anything, when I did a video in the past about a potential Final Fantasy 17, I think Yoshi P talked about it, or somebody talked about it, and when I talked about it in my video, they were saying that they would love to make 2 different 17s, like one that's more of a classic, and then one that's more of a more modern style if they was to type to approach it or whatever. But
that's what they did with Dragon Quest 11. Dragon Quest 11 literally did that very thing. It has its sprite-based version telling the same story and going, but it's 2D, in that regards. And then they had the full 3D, cell shaded version. And I'm like, that I think honestly, I was like, they've already got the solution. They've done it. I'm sure it's a lot of extra work, but not as much as probably what you would expect, because they used to be able to, like, they turned out, I believe, and maybe I'm misremembering or mishearing, but it took like they did Final Fantasy 6 in a year. Like, it's that, okay, cool. Here's the sprites, here's the art, and here we go. And then they had a schedule, so they added on more to it. So it was like, oh, we're actually feeling pretty strong. Chris, do you have any strong thoughts either way on this subject?
I don't think of Final Fantasy as a set of game mechanics. I think Final Fantasy as more of a universe of games, and I think that's because the stories aren't like meant to be done. You're not meant to play the games in order or something like it's a series of movies. It's more of an idea around a style of game from a set of people that have a similar view on what that style should look like. And so that has let it be whatever it needs to be on multiple different platforms and across a very large number of games, both the core numbered ones as well as all the ones that surround it. So like I've always liked Final Fantasy kind of on that big theme idea, and I don't really worry that much. I think that's why I get frustrated that it gets locked inside the Sony ecosystem so much, because I think Final Fantasy would be a really neat team to say, what would you do if you could only design a game for Switch? What would you do if you were designing a game that was meant to be played on the go by all of these devices like the PlayStation Portal, but all of them, like it runs on everything mobile, and let the Final Fantasy universe have as many inlets as possible, instead of pigeonholing it to like it needs to be this Sony exclusive turn-based story thing, like, you know, and you start to get into these purists where I'm told like, oh, you have to consume it with the Japanese audio, and like it just gets to the point of like, okay, like how many ways can you restrict it before I even hit press play? It's like, well, no, you didn't really play Final Fantasy. If you didn't stay to the third credits, then you didn't really play. And it's like, I don't know, but that comes from like Final Fantasy was a game that I played growing up, and like, so I grew up in a split home, and I would take my Final Fantasy X with me and my memory card from house to house. And in my dad's house, I was not allowed to play games with volume on. And so I consumed games in silence. And like I had headphones, but the headphones didn't hook to the TV back then. So I had headphones with like a CD player. So there's like CDs that I would make back before like iPods. And that music is what plays in my head. And when those songs play on the radio, I picture Final Fantasy. When I see Final Fantasy, sometimes I'm hearing those songs. And alternatively, at my mom's, it was this big theater experience on this big TV. I could play it as loud as I wanted, but I could only play in 30-minute to 1 hour intervals. And so games inherently were like, how do I get to the next save point? How do I get to the next checkpoint? And so like for me, through the lens in which I consumed games were already kind of fractured. And what Final Fantasy represented was one of the very few games that was worth taking from one of my households to another. And like, that's why Final Fantasy X will always be special to me. I've beaten it a ton of times. It's why I think it's weird that I never liked Path of Exile. Like I like sphere grids. And so like, that's I don't know. And like, I could only afford one game a year if I saved up my allowance. So that's why I didn't like Final Fantasy X too, because it was such a drastic switch from Final Fantasy X. If they had numbered it Final Fantasy 11 or 12 or 22 or whatever, I think I would have been okay with it. It's like, well, that's what you get. You should have waited for another episode of whatever magazine you could pick up at GameStop to tell you about what this game was. But the fact that they labeled it as a sequel, which is not what they do constantly throughout Final Fantasy, and then it is not a second Final Fantasy X. It's not. It's a different game. It's a totally different game.
Tone and everything.
I was really,
and it's so funny because I really enjoyed 10 too. Like I remember just really loving that one. I don't know why. I was just like, yeah, I love the job sphere, and then the combat felt faster.
Those mechanics wasn't bad at all. It was just that it was a total tone shift from what you played with Final Fantasy X. Because I remember I saw the advertisement for X2. Like they had the two guns like Lara Croft. I said, that's not Unit. Like the whole everything changed, and then it was a little bit more goofy and stuff. And 10 ended off on a high note, and then you're revisiting that world again, and it kind of like destroyed what 10 had established.
If I had never gotten 10-2, and somebody told me today, if you like Final Fantasy X so much, how do you think of 10-2? And today on this podcast was the first time I heard there was a sequel. I think I'd be really excited, and you guys would say, hey, it's a little bit different, so go in with an open mind. And I think I would have enjoyed it. And I think that because a lot of Final Fantasy fans do like 10-2. So it likely is a good game. But as somebody that saved up like all my yard mowing money and bought the game to be a second version of Final Fantasy X that I played over and over, I was like, I got screwed.
And that's what like brings up an interesting concept, because like there's a theme that we're kind of like jumping around here. Namely is that like Final Fantasy action, Final Fantasy turn-based, and it's like they have like avenues. They could like they have the Final Fantasy Origins, like they could start to brand Final Fantasy so that in that brand, because Yoshi P's even said at some point the number 14 isn't going to make any sense. At some point, like that is the number one article and video that you make anytime a Final Fantasy game's coming out. Do you need to play all the previous Final Fantasies? Because there's a whole generation of people who are like, wait, do I need to go play 19 other games before I sit down and play 20? You know, like, and then you think about all the offshoots. The other thing that I want to bring up, and I'm highlighting Sasano's comment about 13.2. So we have sequels of Unnumbered, and then we have, you know, the mainline number that is essentially iterating on itself. And I think that Final Fantasy probably could use a little house cleaning, even though I'll say I'm glad that they enjoyed 13.2. 13.2 pissed me off. Like for some,
I didn't even bother. I didn't even bother it at
dude,
all.
I was, and this is so petty. This is like, you know, this is like, what are like, I don't get I don't get offended by things, but I do get annoyed by things. And it was the fact that like there was a line in 13.2 where one of the guys who's like they're traveling through time, and he's like, "Oh yeah, there's a paradox over there." I was like, "You wouldn't know that's a paradox. You would think that was just normal." What? And I was like, I set the game down and I never returned. And I was like, "All right."
We live in a different time though.
Yeah,
like 20 years ago, that was the only game of its kind coming out that year. And so a lot of these games stood alone where like there wasn't another one. It wasn't like Pokemon had 25 competitors knocking down the door. There was like Monster Rancher and there was Pokemon, and like there were only few games coming out. As opposed to now, like even in this podcast, Mugan listed off like 12 games in plastic that he owns. Like that was a whole year in 1990. Like that was the entire Blockbuster section to rent games, and that's just like one person's pile of shame now. A Steam sale could put 20 games in somebody's download folder that they never play. So it is harder to think of like, okay, well, how do we curate something more specific? Because now we have, you know, genres that almost feel overpopulated.
The the Final Fantasy, it's gonna be interesting to see. I'm not personally like upset. I haven't played, you know, Rebirth, but I've heard immense praise. It crushes 70,
Overrated.
80 hours. And same thing with Metaphor.
Overrated.
You think
like,
Rebirth was overrated?
Overrated. Like I said, I played Rebirth and like remake because it may be controversial, but I would say this: Rebirth had great gameplay mechanics, but if I had to choose which one was the better like game, remake was better than Rebirth, because even though you had all these hours, it was just bloat, hours of bloat. What they do is you finish a story moment, and then after that, here's some homework. Your map is just littered with all these quests and stuff like that, and a lot of quests doesn't really go anywhere or add to anything.
Okay.
So did you see the Viva La Dirt League post recently about the side quest that you don't want to do, and the guy's trying to talk you into not doing his side quest?
Yeah, and then when you do the quest, and then what bothers me the most, there's some quests that you do where they force you into like a gameplay mechanic or a mini game that you have to play or whatever like that, and I'm like, oh my god, I have to play this mini game again. Why do I have to play this or whatever? You know, it was just too much. It was just too much in it. And before I looked up, I had put it 110 hours. And now when I want to try to do a second playthrough, I'm like, I don't want to do this again, because a lot of your skills, like your folio skills, like your team skills, are locked behind the quest. If you have to do these quests to get those points in order to get the better skills. So you have to go back and regrind that stuff again. I don't want to do that. But with Remake, I played through that game at least like 3 or 4 times. And the pacing was a lot better. And even though yes, you had your fest questions and stuff, but they weren't as bad. But Rebirth, just because you have a lot to do doesn't mean it's good. You know, it was just a bloated mess. And now second playthrough
agrees.
Second playthrough is the worst experience. It's the worst. I don't want to play it again. And then when you do the second playthrough, when you play on hard mode, you're not allowed to use let me see, you can't use items. And then the monsters are double times the health and everything, and they hit a lot harder. So now you have to learn how to manage your MP, because Remake was the same way on hard mode. You can't use items. So it's more so your builds for your characters and how to get to each chapter while conserving the MP that you have, because you can't use Ether, you can't use any of those other types, you can't use Phoenix Down, you can't use any of those things playing through the entire game. Now take that and add that to Rebirth, and they said Rebirth had the hardest challenge to Platinum. It's hard or whatever. So I was like, no, I'm not doing a second playthrough of this. So it's that's the shame part about it. But nah, it's overrated. It's overrated.
So both of you guys, any highlights, anything that they revealed? We got Rick Tone saying Onimusha for them with the sequel to that like beloved game that came out back in the GameCube era, in my mind. If my timeline's correct. Any big standouts for you guys?
Yeah, go ahead. Let me see. My thing that got me, I think, really blew my mind, or it got me hyped, I guess. Virtual Fighter. You know, virtual. Bro, like
yeah.
This I can tell how you have IPs that are very impressionable, that leaves an impact on your life as a kid, and as an adult you can recognize it, because the game looked just so different, like the opening cinematic. And once you see the guy does that shoulder thrust, like I automatically knew it was Virtual Fighter, because the only person that's associated with that is Akira. So when I seen that shoulder, because he looks completely different. He like a totally different character in the CGI cutscene. But that shoulder thrust had let me know that was Virtual Fighter. And it looks gorgeous with that, just that little bit of gameplay. It's a complete evolution, because we didn't have the last Virtual Fighter that released was back in 2006. And all they kept doing was just keep remastering Virtual Fighter 5. Every time they kept remastering. So since 2006 and now, years later, we get a new Virtual Fighter. So that got me hyped. And then, of course, Sonic Racing, was it Cross Dimensions or something like that? Like, I'm a big Sonic fan. I grew up off Sonic and stuff like that. So seeing that, because the Sonic Racing games are like very, very, I liked it better than Mario Kart. That was such
a minor teaser, though. And it's like, Jeff Keighley's like, don't worry, guys. I was playing it in the summer, and it's gonna be amazing. Because I was like, it was like literally like, all right. And then he's just get in the car, Shadow, and drives, and then it's like no gameplay at all, and it's like, oh, all right, I guess we're moving on.
And Turok the Dinosaur Hunter, like I was surprised. And the thing is, I picked up on it right away. So I saw dinosaurs, and I saw like an Indian guy with a bow. I said, it has to be the Turok.
The hatchet and the bow. We were all like, is this? Because are they redoing Turok? Oh my goodness!
Wild. That's pretty much it. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, it didn't really have any other things that had me like going crazy over, but that was the highlight, especially Virtual Fighter. I walked away with that like excited.
Speaking of fighters, Noctis is reminding us that Clive is actually coming to Tekken 8, and Tekken 8 winning Game of the Year.
Why, Clive? Why? Like it doesn't make sense. Like Tifa made perfect sense in Tekken. It's the same way they put Noctis in Tekken 7. Why? It doesn't. It's a fisticuffs game. You fight with you do martial arts, and they keep putting characters with swords in a Tekken game. It would have made sense if Clive was in Soul Calibur.
Soul Calibur. That's exactly what I was going to say.
That would have made sense. But we got Clive in there. But I understand, like these crossover characters is to cross promote their products that's coming out, that's already out. And Final Fantasy 16. Didn't sell as they hoped. So having Clive in there, as a promotion and stuff like that, it hopefully would, bolster some sales for 16 and stuff. But I was like, oh my god, they actually put Clive in this.
Chris, any big things for you announced or anything you're
looking for? RSJ fan. In my game night group, there was immediately like, well, it's time to invest in a Polish gaming company again, because their stock always goes on a run every time they come out with a Witcher game. And then they go, as soon as it announces its sales numbers, that'll peak, dump the stock, wait for them to announce the next Cyberpunk, and then buy again. Because their stock just does this. It's like it's tied to game releases. I was excited to see so many games do well that I had heard of, and like that might just be my own echo chamber speaking, but it feels like in game awards in past years that it's like, if these games are so good, and this is like a very like self-centered view, but like why is none of the word of mouth making it to me? Not why is it like the group, the game my group is playing, but like some years it feels like they announce a game, he's nominated and then wins, and like those are the only two times I've ever heard of that game. Like it's not been in my algorithm a single time. I haven't seen like a skill up post on it, even like his like weekly updates. None of the news articles have made my feed. So like that might just be my little section of the algorithm is just so out of alignment those years. But it feels weird that you're like, okay, but I did hear about a lot of other games and they're not even on this list. And so this year just felt so much more. The one that shocked me was Batro. And I heard when people were like, oh, it's going to get nominated, it's going to do really well. I went and I heard it was a mobile game, and then I was playing a mobile game. I like mobile games.
Yeah.
And I was playing a mobile game, and a friend of mine that we sometimes will like pass recommendations back and forth. It said he was actively playing Batro right then.
Mm-hmm.
And so I called him the next time I was driving somewhere, and I go, "Hey, I saw you on like Batro," and he goes, "Oh my God, let me tell you about Batro." And he was so pumped. And
I voted for Batro for Game of the Year. Like when the we could go in and vote like that. It is that good.
I haven't downloaded it because the mobile space has conditioned us all to believe that everything should be free and that anything that's $1 better be utterly incredible. And Batro is $10.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Which keep in mind, for my PlayStation or Xbox, they could charge me $60. I could hate it for 10 hours and never play it again. I'd go, well, what are you gonna do? And Batro, I'm like, it better change my life. It better fundamentally alter my faith in the universe. It better
remember Vampire Survivors? It has that essentially where you're playing it and you're like, all right, another round. Like, okay,
just one more.
I'm just gonna go back in one more.
I mean,
and then you wake and then you're like, oh, it's 2 a.m. and tomorrow and today's gonna suck. It's like,
but if I go to sleep now, I can wake up early and play more before work.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's like I should go now. Just set it down. We'll resume this later. And yeah, I recommend it. I think it's a really, really great game. It's also another really easy game to be a second screen kind of game. Like if you're like, oh, I'm kind of watching a show and actually, wanting to pay attention to it, okay, and be like, all right, it's like, boop, boop, boop.
We're going back through the Harry Potters. We watch them every December, and this time we're watching them on Peacock. And on Peacock, there is like extra scenes that somehow in like every other extended version we've seen, it's like 5 seconds at a time, but it'll be an extra line, and we'll both be doing something, and we'll both look up like, well, that was new. So, for anybody out there that needs another subscription service in their life.
I think for me, like when we look at the kind of the RPGs, they showed off Elden Ring Night Rain, which is like a multi or co-op dungeon, kind of aspect. And I was like, okay, that seems interesting. I've really enjoyed my time with Elden Ring so far. And then they also showed off, I think we got the date for Crimson Desert, which is based off of the Black Desert, kind of series, but it's not an MMO. It's a, action RPG, and that's coming and rocking and rolling. And the reason, go ahead, Chris, if you want to answer Robert's question.
Yeah, you can play Batro, I think, on Steam, but it first, it won Best Mobile Game. It is available on phone.
Best Indie. It won
Best
4
indie,
awards,
but it won Best Mobile. So they're calling it a mobile game because it's available on mobile, and so it is not exclusive to mobile, I don't think. Right. But it does very well on mobile.
I have it on Steam, for example, and it's also on GeForce Now. So that's another oh, that's an easy pick it up and play.
That's why, is because it was designed to be, as opposed to a lot of games when they come over from Steam to mobile, like if you're not designed for mobile, it doesn't really make sense to try to go there later.
Yeah. The Witcher 4 stuff, I never played the Witcher series, and so I know Brandon, my brother, loves Witcher 3, and he's praised it, and it's like, oh, maybe I need to find some time to sit down and play that one. Obviously, I it's
one of the things anyways, one less child.
Yeah, bonus time.
Weak.
It's like, oh man, dude. It's like, come on.
He only has 5. Do you know how much free time you have when it's Brian?
Here's the strategy. Here's the strategy, right? I'm going I'm trying to at what point do I enlist them to play and review these video games and just, all right, kids, you now run the channel, you now make the content, and I'm just gonna go code.
There are stories of this. Some of those parents end up in jail, so be careful. Be careful how you proceed from this point forward.
Just so people know, I do make videos with the kids and stuff like that, but we set them to private, and they're just for family. Because my philosophy is when they turn 18, they can, as an adult, decide if they want this stuff online for anybody to see. And if they say no, then it's it's these are,
But you'll have enough private that you can train the robot that replaces them when we're all turned.
Yeah, pretty much. Exactly. Yeah.
Train the AI model.
It's well, they already have our data anyway. So it's all right, give it in. It's just take over. But yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to Crimson Desert. I think when we start looking at 2025, it seems like it's going to be another really big year for action RPGs. there was like with Witcher, I was like, that doesn't seem like a game that's coming out next year. You know, like it's like there was a couple where they're like, yeah, late 2025. Another way to say that would be sometime in 2026.
Exactly.
Like, you know, I was like, okay, like it thankfully didn't seem too far off, but the biggest pain, like the biggest disappointment was like we didn't get any information or any news or any follow-up on Light of Fire. And Sean Murray revealed it last year at the Game Awards. I was hoping that if nothing, like a new trailer or, you know, like, hey, we're working on it, because it turns out Hello Games is publishing whoever's making the follow-up to Overcooked. They're making like a new game. They kind of showed that off. Like it was an interesting ad.
There's an Overcooked that I don't know if it's made by them or not, but there's an Overcooked alternative where you're moving furniture, like you're helping them unpack an apartment. And that looks solidly enraging. Like you're trying to carry a couch down the stairs. Like, and you like, yeah, that looks solid. As we look at 2025 and we have so many what look to be great games coming out. One of the things that I think this year kind of exposed was as we move into a point where both sequels, DLCs, and true remakes, where it's a drastically different title, all start to be not just commercially successful, but be like viable contenders for being people's favorite game of the year. Does the game of the year need to start adding categories to better define this? Because I saw some people that were concerned that a game was going to win game of the year that was, you know, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. And they were like, well, that shouldn't be allowed to win. And it didn't, but like, what if it had?
Right.
So like best ongoing is very broad. Do we expect them to start adding categories to help kind of better delineate what's a DLC versus like Final Fantasy VII Remake Rebirth? Like that's not a DLC. But it's also not like a brand new title, but it kind of is a brand new title. And then like as we look at like MMO expansions and things like that, like Final Fantasy 14 will put out a great expansion, but like what is that? It's not, to somebody who doesn't play MMOs, it's almost unrecognizable as a piece of content. You're like, so you put out 40 extra hours that are at the end of a 1,200 hour journey. Like, why is that? Like, am I supposed to go buy that? So I don't know. Like, I think that's the question. Are there categories that are missing from the Game Awards as gaming changes?
Yeah, I believe so. I truly believe so. Especially after the way you explained it and everything, as far as, because I was confused when they had the Elden Ring Erdtree as DLC or as a game of year. Like, that is like, when we start doing this, like, this is not making any sense. Like, we're gonna start doing this now. So I think that we definitely gonna need new categories to like reclassify, redefine, and you also have the community saying like a remaster shouldn't be, in this category, or a remake shouldn't be in this category. These are old titles just being remade over and stuff. So that would make perfect sense to start redefining, start making new, type of categories. And what you said about Final Fantasy VII Remake, this is like a kind of like an ongoing game, but at the same time, it's like a new game because of a lot of the liberties they have taken with this as well. But it's still in an old game, based off of an old game that was years ago in the PS1. So I think we would need new categories to redefine some of these games, especially as some of these games are going through this type of different format of like, okay, we're gonna start breaking these games into 3 different parts, or okay, this game's gonna last for the next couple of years because we want to treat it as a live service and everything like that. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. I was actually quite impressed that we saw Helldivers take so many rewards, but that's also like at some point, like, is that
good?
Leave the category of like, it was in a category of like best action or something like that, and then also like, okay, but it's also an ongoing game. And so I think, Chris, you highlight a really like interesting point, and it's going to be something where I think naturally the show's going to have to evolve. My one thing that I said is that as long as they don't limit expansions from the game of the year category going forward, then at least it seems like, okay, this is the general rule. But if this is the one and only year, then an expansion to a game is in that category, it's going to just see like, well, and they could always come out and say, hey guys, we thought about it. We decided going forward, we're not going to do that. I would respect that. But if it just never happens to show up, there's always going to be that kind of thought in the back of my mind. Now, did anybody here feel like there were any kind of snubs, like things that did not occur that they wanted to see? RSJ fan says they wish that Final Fantasy 14 would have won for best ongoing game. It's won for best community support, like in the past, but I don't know if Final Fantasy 14's won for best ongoing game ever. So what do y'all think?
It's really hard to call something a snub because in any one of these categories, there is at least one game that I have no awareness of. So to say like my game belongs in there, like I can't downrank enough other games to know that the games that I enjoy are the games that I follow or the types of games I'd like to see win awards belong, just because gaming's so big. I think that's the difference between this and something like the Oscars or the Academy Awards, where you're talking about something where all of these are between an hour and a half and 3 hours. All of these are viewed in the same format, either in the big screen or in people's homes. All of these are available for roughly the same price point and are using the same actors and a lot of the same visual effects. And so like there's different genres, but like it's a very similar product, right? We're at a chili cook-off where everybody brought chili. And so, yes, the chilies are different, but they're all chili. And then you're coming over here and like, it's a drastic difference between what Final Fantasy 14 considers ongoing support and what Helldivers, which isn't that old of a game, considers ongoing support. And then like, when you talk about like best ongoing, I think like Call of Duty got in there. Well, they could argue they have no ongoing support. They drop a game every year. They have the worst ongoing support. But this particular Call of Duty was good. So I don't know how you would judge a snub. But if you guys have examples, I'm open to it.
See, I walked away from every award feeling like, basically, I guess I would judge a snub as that, did it feel rigged? Because there have been times where you're like, wait, like and obviously, yeah, you know, like everybody's entitled to their opinion, but it's like
Dragon Age wins Game of the Year. That feels a little bit pre.
Right, exactly. So it's like I didn't feel like there was any moment from last show that I was like, and I think I jokingly go rigged, you know, for like one award, but I was like, yeah, I didn't feel like there was anything where I'm calling into question why. Like I was like, I clearly feel like, you know, especially Astro Bot, I was really thrilled by that. I was like, oh, a platformer, like winning game of the year, like wow, this is really kind of like a throwback.
Most anticipated game being GTA 6. Yes.
Yeah.
Like yes.
Right.
Path of Exile.
Literally, people have tried to rush the stage with Jeff and be like, oh, GTA 6, please. You know, it's like okay, yeah, like that's.
Yeah, because my friend on my stream was saying, no, Metro Prime 4 should have got. I'm like, come on, it's GTA 6. Like when GTA 6 dropped the trailer, it broke the internet. Like
it did drop the trailer. It dropped like development footage. It wasn't done. And then people were like, this doesn't even look done. It's not. It wasn't supposed to release.
Yeah, so I'm like, dude, if you really think that Metroid got snubbed, like, come on, bro, it's GTA 6. Like, everybody wanted GTA 6.
Yeah, it broke the internet just when there was a rumor that it was coming out. That GTA is a great game. I don't understand. Like, I don't have the same connection to it that people do that have played GTA 5 to the level of success that it's had. It's astounding.
Yeah, but that's also a game that it looks like that. I mean, we know that's not coming out in 2025 now, so it's like hello 2026. Yeah, maybe.
The problem is they have to get it exactly right. Like, how do you match like most anticipated game? Like, how does Death Stranding 2 catch up with Death Stranding? Like, so much of Death Stranding's impact was that nobody expected to be emotionally moved by a walking simulator. So now you go in, you're like, okay, I'm prepared to be emotionally moved by a walking simulator. That's going to break it. Like, doesn't that ruin it? And like the interactions with other players being so like subverted, where it's like, oh, I'm playing this solo game. Oh, wait, there's evidence of a distant person. And like at a time when it was coming out at a time when like think about like a lot of my friends, when was Death Stranding? Is that COVID era?
It's gotta be, right?
And so like so I feel like that was a game that was coming at a time where like the definition of human interaction was also weird when you weren't playing games. And so like I that's when I at least store that in my head. So like these most anticipated games, Metroid Prime 4. I have been hearing people ask for a Metroid game every time this conversation comes up for as far back as I remember. So like the most anticipated game category is almost like the most cursed category, because there's no way for any of those games to live up to what people are expecting. I'm not saying it never happens, but like they are starting out ranked 11 out of 10 and can only fall from there.
Yeah, man. Like Grand Theft Auto 6, man. I'm telling you right now, they can sell that game for $200, like as a standard price. And everybody's going to buy that game. And how like GTA 5 lasted for over a decade. So the way that they're making this game, this is going to last for 2 decades. They're going to make this the biggest Grand Theft Auto game as possible. I can see them doing expansion packs, adding more cities, Liberty City. You know, what's the other San Andreas? I can see them doing all kinds of stuff. This is going to be the biggest game ever and the longest lasting game ever. I can see it right now.
Or it's Halo Infinite.
Yeah, that can also happen.
That's always a risk because that's one of the things about like
that can also happen.
Like the thing that a lot of people were like, oh, they worked on it for 10 years. It's like you do realize I think the average time somebody stays at a job is maybe around 3 years. And I'm just making that off the top of my head because I know, like, you know, it's rare that people stay with companies for, you know, longer than that. Well, that means they literally had 3 plus multiplier of turnover during that period of time. Could be, you know, completely wrong. They could, you know, I don't know their individual thing, but turnover just means things just get harder. Rework has to happen. Lots of other knock-on effects. So from a development and as a developer, I'm like, whoo boy.
All right.
Like,
Yeah.
AI, which is already completely without fault and is always getting it correct, says the average time at a single studio is 2 to 3 years.
So that's at least three turnovers of personnel, you know.
Oh wow.
Minimum.
Yeah. And didn't like the creator or whatever like leave or
that means you're being trained by somebody that was also not there at the start.
Right.
And
why
they
is
were
this
trained
decision made? It was like, I don't know.
At the start.
You ever hear the story about like this husband and wife get married and so the wife's like, hey, I'm gonna make a roast or something like that. She lops off the ends of the roast. The husband's like, why did you just do that? Like, and she's like, oh, because my mom does. I was like, oh, okay. So she called her mom, like, hey, why did we chop off the ends of the roast? And she's like, oh, it's because your grandmother did. And then they're like, well, kind of curious now because they never thought about it. So they call up the grandma and she's like, why did you cut off the ends of the roast? She's like, because my pan wasn't big enough to fit the roast. Why are y'all doing it?
Oh shit.
Like, so that's kind of one of those things. It's like, why is this decision made? You got to talk to, you know, a couple people back in 2019. You know,
some of whom are no longer going to comment.
Well, honestly, at this point, especially with the way the gaming has gone this year, you don't want them to. It's like, I wonder if we'll see policies of like, you know, from these companies, like, y'all get off Twitter, you know, like just don't make any comment.
I would love to live in a world where all game devs are ethically and morally correct people by a definition that we can all agree to. But so far, I have yet to see a game dev come out and make a series of public statements that end in a way that improve my thought on the video. I mean, I don't know why I don't like what you guys are doing, but if you keep going, I will. It only gets bad. It's rough.
It's rough.
But the games have been good. The product has been on point. Which is good. There were several years ago where we were having bad product from studios that were doing awful things to each other. It is much better that the dev studios are still struggling, but the games have gotten so much better.
Yeah, I feel like I've eaten like a champ this year. The fact is my backlog has grown with like really great games, and that's allowed me to be very selective.
Exactly.
And skip out on a few. It looks like Mugan's stepping away, so I was about to cut to him. So yeah, like we had Black Myth Wukong, which came out this year. It's been great. I saw a couple from message from Sasano earlier in the chat talking about Enshrouded in Pow World not being nominated to the show, and I think that's a category that early access isn't.
This is some of my backlog.
Oh, mama! For those listening to the audio, the backlog is like his head and torso in height that's still in the plastic from the start of the show.
Romance and Saga. I forgot I bought this.
Is there anything in there that by the time you get to it doesn't make sense to get to? Not to like a Concord level, but like
I don't know, because I may just not even open Metroid Prime remake, the remaster remake. I bought this. Was this last year? I think it was last year. Yeah, it came out last year.
you got to put
I
the
had the
labels
original
on it, like when you put something in the freezer.
Yeah. I forgot all about this. I have this on the original on the GameCube, the original, and I wanted to go back and revisit this, but I may not even open it now. I've waited so long. I got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then me and my daughter, because I'm gonna have her on my YouTube channel, we're gonna review this together whenever I get a chance to open the Peach game. Because I bought her a copy, bought myself a copy. We're gonna review that. But yeah, I got a whole ton of games.
The Peach was nominated. Like you look at that family category, and it pretty much was Nintendo and I think Astro Bot. Astro Bot
I got too much. I got too much stuff. I got too much stuff, and still not counting the other games I got over on my shelf over there. So,
that's the problem. Isn't the ability to acquire games anymore? It's the ability to find time that I can sit down and play them. For now,
my nephew is the other way. He cannot wait for games to come out. He's beaten everything he owns, and he cannot afford all the games he wants to play. So the age is different, right? But that's because he's still of an age where, like, $100 is a life-changing amount of money. Not just a lot of money. Not just like I would wonder why I had that much in my pocket, but like would alter his view of the world. And if your boss told you today, hey, your next paycheck's going to be $100 heavy, just want to let you know, it doesn't drastically alter your plans. Like, it's good news, but like it's not like, well, 2024 is different. Like it's just not. So,
I will have that ice cream now.
I'm getting the guac at Chipotle.
Let's go. Living the high life. Mugan, where can people find you, sir?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/MuganLord. I have the next video that I have coming up. I'm covering an article that IGN had covered last month, at the end of last month. They talked about how the AAA gaming bubble has burst or is on its way bursting because of how these budgets are for these games and everything like that. I'm saying, IGN, they're actually finally admitting certain things that's going on within the industry and they explaining why games like Concord have failed and stuff like that. And I just wanted to give my input on it and everything of how and how the gaming industry should handle gaming moving forward, because they also pointed out, and I also pointed out too, they say if you look at this year's Game Awards or this year, a lot of people are liking the games that are very simple, low cost, low budget, compared to all these games as cinematic experiences and stuff like that. And gamers want something just simple, go back to normalcy when it comes to gaming and stuff. So I'm making a video on that for next week and stuff. So you guys can go check that out. And of course, as well, my comic book is releasing January 6, 2025. You can check out the trailer and everything and preparing for that. But yeah, that's about it.
Heck yeah, dude. Chris, where can people find you, sir?
Here. So I guess that means next year. I am working on getting some YouTube shorts out and stuff, so they'll just show up randomly. But that's not something to subscribe for. They just push their way into your life, whether you like it or not.
As God intended.
Yeah, I've been wanting to experiment with some short form stuff to just kind of dip my toe into whatever the shenanigans that Ginger Prime does.
I've actually I've been so busy, and it's just like I was like, all right, I need to sit down and no, I don't think I'm gonna make that video. Like I'm just like, it's I've slowed down here in December, and it's like getting ready for Christmas, and it's like with the kids and the activities. I'm like, all right. And then I'll probably kick it up pretty fun and pretty strong in January, as that is always. It's a nice month. I always find like where a lot of people take time off, and so it's like while the ad revenue isn't ever really there, it's still nice because it's like, oh yeah, people are still wanting to watch all kinds of stuff. So I'm gonna see if I can wrap up a couple of scripts that have long been marinating in the old notepad.
Yeah, that is a good idea, because I have a retrospective for the Xeno series that
nice.
I finished the script and everything. I just haven't gotten around to getting all the material to start editing and stuff. And I'm doing a thing on also an essay video on the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild trilogy. Was I just don't like those games at all. Do not like these versions of Zelda games. But so yeah, I'm pretty much doing a series on that, talking about that as well.
All right, well, that's something to look forward to, guys. Everybody, thanks so much for tuning in for our final live show of 2024. We'll be back. I think we'll let you know. Most likely I think because I'm like New Year's is a Thursday, so it's like maybe we'll see where everybody's at on Friday, but we'll let you guys know. Looking forward to kicking off another year of gaming with everybody, and thank you all so much for tuning in, being here, and hopefully we'll see you guys in the next show. But until then, take care.
Peace.